Hello, everybody. Today we are going to see about the risk management, which is there one of the major subject in MCOM Banking and Finance Part 2, no, Semester 2, Part 1. So let's get started right away. I'm sharing my screen. Okay, now you can see the screen. So we start with the first chapter. And first chapter is comprising of introduction to risk. We are going to see risk measurement and control. So in this chapter, what are the things which we are going to cover up? The first thing is obviously the definition of the risk. Then we are going to see what is the process of the risk, then risk organization, and we are going to see the key risk which a business faces. So let's get with the definition. Now, today we are going to see what is the business risk. Obviously, we are going to tell the risk about everything related with business and finance. So when we talk about business and in your stream of banking and finance, definitely you're going to imagine or you are going to have in your background of your mind a banking organization or a financial organization. With that background or with that situation in your mind, let's see what is the business risk a bank or a financial institute has it, or what do you mean by business risk in it. So, a risk resulting from significant conditions, events, circumstances, actions, or inactions that could adversely affect an entity's ability to achieve its objectives and execute its strategies, or from setting of inappropriate objectives and strategies. Uh, if you talk about risk, the word risk, that is a very common word. We always use it in the terms of uncertainty. So, this definition tells about the uncertainties of business and where these uncertainties crop up or come. See, we cannot plan the things, or the things cannot be executed, or completely successful execution of the planned things cannot be done because there is an element of uncertainty related with the future. So some of the other events come up or circumstances are such. We take actions against that circumstances or we do not take actions against that circumstances. So that particular thing will affect the entity's ability to achieve its objectives. So not only its objectives, but also executing its strategies. So that is called business risk. Now let's get in detail things. If what does this actually means? So if you see here, we have got a table wherein an organization is having some corporate functions, and these functions are facing some risk areas. So the very first one which you can see is human resources. What is the things or risk areas a human resource function will face? Well, it will face the poor morale of the employees and talent retention. Talent retention means now if there is a talent in human resource and we want to retain that, and it's a very difficult thing that to retain such a talent in a fast dynamic world. Employees talent or human resource talent is very difficult to retain in an organization. So this is a risk area for human resource. Likewise, in sales and marketing, we have got the risk from poor customer loyalty and again the customer retention. We go for the operations of the firm where it is inability to digitalize or automate processes. Well, in this world of digitalization and after the effect of COVID and the lockdown effect specifically, the whole scenario of banking system has changed, and nobody is in this thing from this situation. Everybody has digitalized. And if a firm is unable to get into that digitalization, then yes, that firm is facing a very, very big risk. Then treasury, low returns on investment. Treasury, if you know, in banking, it's nowadays a separate department of treasury, and treasury is supposed to generate profits. So if the treasury is not generating profits, that is a risk area. Then information technology, well, banking and financial institution need to secure their systems. So the risk comes from hacking and unauthorized access. A very talked about topic nowadays. Every now and then we hear that some of the others bank account has been hacked and the money has gone. So this is the risk faced by the banking institutes as well as financial institutes. Growing number of frauds are, well, it is now it's a very critical situation. They have to face it, and this is a risk which almost every bank is facing. Next is new product development. So here, product can be a financial instrument, product can be any marketable security, then the development and the product failure. If a company, if a bank is not into a product which is very much running, then obviously there is a risk the revenue is lost from there. If the company or the bank has come up with the product and the product fails, again there is a risk of the failure of that product. Market may not like it, market may not be good enough to launch the product. So there is always a risk element in the new product. Then again, we have got treasury, wherein treasury faces a different type of risk that is called mismatch in the cash flows. The main purpose of the treasury is to have a smooth cash flow in the banks. And if that smooth cash flow is a challenge, that is a risk they are facing of mismatch in that cash flow. And the last but not the least, finance and accounts, where financial things are to be recorded, that they are facing the risk of unreliable financial statements. So now I suppose you have got a very, very clear idea of what type of risk we are talking about, what it is. So let's see the risk in an individual way. I'll scroll down the things so that we'll go ahead with it. The very first risk which we are talking about today is the market risk. Now here, market risk, the name itself suggests what it is. Yes, it is with dealing with the customers, it is dealing with the competitors, it is dealing with the suppliers, it is dealing with the regulatory authorities, everything. Now here, market in the banking and financial institution, the market is of interest rate, the customers, the deposits interest rate, the foreign exchange prices, the equity prices, the commodity prices. So RBI has defined market risk as the possibility of loss to a bank caused by the changes in market rates, prices. So market risk is the possibility for an investor to experience losses. Now here the investor is the bank, and this loss will arise due to the factors that affect the overall performance of the financial market. So this is an unavoidable risk for all the banks. They are not immune with this. It is an external risk, you can say, a systematic risk. Next is operational risk. Now this risk is associated with the operations or operating things, the way they are operating their business, the organization that is called the banks. The risk is due to the result from the failure of the people employed. Here, when we talk about organization, organizing things or operations, the human resource come into the picture. They are the one, they are the life factor in all the things. They are the one to do it, the work. And if they fail, that means the operations have failed. The internal process has failed. The system has failed. So, there are some external factors also affecting on that, but basically these are internal factors which affect this operational risk a lot. Then strategic risk. So here the risk faced is due to the strategy adopted by the banks, by the organized financial organization, and that strategy may not be appropriate or may not be, you can say, the most correct thing to be done in the market, the economy, the technological factor, or improper implementation of the strategy itself. So that will be affecting the organization's objective. Then we go for the compliance risk. It includes material financial loss or loss of reputation, which occur due to the failure of compliance with the laws. Bank have to observe, their financial institute have to observe a lot of laws regulated by RBI, the SEBI, all these regulatory authorities come up with all the rules and regulations and laws. And if the banks and this financial institution do not comply with it, that leads to penalty. Now that penalty is not the only thing which this is the loss, but also their reputation, because this is the business of trust. So if once the reputation is lost, a lot of things are lost. The market is lost, the customers are lost. These are repercussion effects. So compliance risk is something which is internal operating also. And yes, now and again, some of the other rules come up and they have to observe that, they have to comply with it. Then comes regulatory risk. So regulatory bodies, again, a compliance risk and a regulatory risk is, we sometimes say in synonyms. And this is the policies and procedures in being given by the regulatory bodies in which the business has to do their operations. And if that they are failing in it, then yes, some of the other charges are there, some of the other things are there which they have to face. Now comes reputation risk. Now reputation risk can be because of some another risk like compliance risk, like operational risk. So that leads to the loss of the customers and in turn loss of the revenue. Then next one, legal risk. This arises due to uncertainty of legal actions or uncertainty in the application, interpretation of contracts, laws, or regulations. Legal risk is a risk arising from the failure to comply with statutory or legal requirements. Yes, that itself is self-explanatory, and there are very this thing specific laws governing the operations, the things of the banking business, and now and again they keep on changing and they have to comply with it. So the compliance risk, the regulatory risk, and the legal risk are one and the same thing. Next is interest rate risk. Yes, this might affect the banking business very adversely, and interest rates, if they are charged more, they lose the customers. If they are charged less, they are losing their revenue. So it is a, you can say, double-edged sword, the interest rate. So yes, there's a definite risk in the interest rate. Then net interest income earnings. So the interest they pay and the interest which they get from the deposits, the net interest, that is the risk, that is their earning. On that, obviously the risk is there, whether they are earning what they have expected, whether they are earning more than that or whether they are earning less than that. Then foreign exchange risk. Well, with every second, or in fact every nanosecond, there is a foreign exchange fluctuation rates going on, and risk of the loss that the entity may suffer due on account of adverse fluctuation in the exchange rate movement in currencies. So banks who are dealing with exchange foreign currencies face this risk. Then comes management risk. Risk of management interface in day-to-day operations and putting undue demands and restrictions on the staff. Quality of senior management affects the decision making and contributes to management risk. Well, this is a risk being arising with the management, the top level, the middle level, and the lower level. All the three levels of management, if they are incapable, if they are not uh, this this thing competent enough to face the situation, well, yes, the business won't be able to be managed nicely. So now we go for staffing risk. Risk of not employing the right person for the right job. Very clearly it is defined. What do you mean by staffing? Is the employing right person on the right job. If you are not doing it, if that is not done, then yes, the staffing risk is there. So that will be affecting the job, the quality, the operations, everything will be affected. Then comes technological risk. As talked about earlier also, the technological environment is facing very dynamically, and every time it is fast changing and upgrading itself very, very fastly. So yes, using outdated technology will obviously affect the business operations adversely, and you won't be able to compete in the market. So bank has to be upgrading itself now and again with the technology, and this is the risk which they are facing. Then business continuity risk. Risk arising from inability to restore operations immediately in the event of incident or disaster. Now, this incidents and disasters are unforeseen. Nobody can predict them. So, if something happens like that, and what is the after effect of it, that is after that incident or after that some untoward, unthinkable or uncertain things being happening like a disasters, how is the business coping up with it, how fast they are overcoming it and starting their normalcy. That is the risk. Information or data security, a very, very highly talked about subject, and very, very much to be paid attention on. So here the risk is of unauthorized access to the data, poor access controls, applicable level risk to levels rise to this risk. Yes, while information has been long been appreciated as valuable and important asset, the rise of knowledge economy and digital revolution has led to organizations become increasingly dependent on information. And that is why information processing and especially IT is now the things which is really highly risky. Country risk helps to address the issues of identifying, measuring, monitoring, and controlling country exposure risk. Procedures are in place for ensuring that necessary steps are taken up as per the RBI guidelines. In India, you are in the banking business, you have to go with the RBI guidelines. So that is country risk. Then fraud risk. Whenever risk comes up, we always think about fraud. If somebody is faking fraud, what we'll do, what we will do, how can you this thing escape from the frauds? So that is this risk. Yes, you're correct. You are, whatever you're thinking is absolutely correct. This is a risk of lose of access or control, easy accessibility, being management overridden, or deliberate actions of omission, commission that leads to financial losses. Price risk, probability of loss occurring from adverse movement in the market price of an asset. Now here the asset can be anything, a tradable in negotiable instrument in the market or exchange or over the counter things, and the prices being estimated by the bank and the current market prices going in a reverse direction. That risk is always there. Then process risk. Process risk is the inability of the management to meet its process related objectives on account of the failure of activities in a business process. So when plans are being laid out and how to go ahead with achieving that objective, there is a process being defined. And if the management is not capable enough, or there is an inability of the management to go and implement that process in a successful way. So that is always a risk. Then security risk, yes, threat to the system, threat to the whole this thing scenario, or as we have already said about the IT, the digitalization, the security risk is more ever before governance risk. This affects to ineffective, unethical management of a company by its executive and managerial level. So here the management itself is doing something which is unethical. So here there is a governance problem. So that is the risk. Then safety risk. The most common is the workplace safety and some untoward hazards, illness, death. Well, that is the, you can say, the maximum loss. It can be some small injury or something which happens. I mean, there are precautions to need to be taken about the safety of the workplace. Then that is means the examples are given. What kind of risk can arise, like spills on floors, then working from heights, then unguarded machinery, at electrical hazards, confined spaces. Well, in Mumbai, you need to have this thing. Otherwise, having a spacious office is a dream thing. So confined spaces, but not so much confined also. So that is again one of the factor of safety and machinery related hazards. So here we have seen lot of things where now the idea of business risk is clear in your mind. So that's it. And next video will be on the risk process. We'll going ahead with this chapter. So we are going to cover in the next video about the risk process. Thank you.